Hello, and welcome to Political Forum, Wednesday, May 31st. Today we welcome First Ward Alderman Joe Moreno. Welcome to our show.
Thank you, Freddie. Thank you.
Thank you for appearing on Political Forum, Alderman Moreno.
Absolutely.
My name is Freddie Calixto. I am a board member here at CAN TV, and you're watching an interactive program brought to you as a community service by CAN TV. Be sure to tell your friends that they can also watch this show online at cantv.org/hotline. We welcome your questions for the Alderman by calling us at 312-738-1060. During the next 25 minutes, we'll try to get as many calls in as possible on the air. Alderman, again, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Let's just get into a couple of questions that I have here, and then we're hoping get some callers on the line.
Okay.
My first question concerned about nearly 50% surge in home pricing in your ward around the 606 area. Can you talk a little bit about that? Is there a plan to stop that gentrification, or what's going on in the area?
Well, I'll first say that's excuse me. I thank CAN TV, but we have the 606, which is a new linear park, which is amazing, and it connects neighborhoods from Lawndale all the way to Ashland down what we call Bloomingdale Trail and Bloomingdale Street. And development is a good thing. It's good that there's investment coming into the community. Some of those communities have been ravished over the decades with a lack of investment. And quite frankly, violence and gang issues. We have to temper that, though, Freddie, with the fact that longtime homeowners that supported the Bloomingdale Trail and the 606 for the last 15 years, that's how long at least it took to get this done. So we've introduced an ordinance around the 606 and the Bloomingdale Trail that would significantly increase the demolition permit and would also provide funding for rehabbing homes. So very quickly, the spirit of the ordinance is that if a developer is going to come in and tear down a house and build something new that's very expensive, they're going to have to pay a significantly more demolition fee. So trying to not have that happen through a higher fee. But then secondly, telling the homeowners, hey, maybe they don't have the money to fix up their house, it's livable, but needs a new roof, needs some things done, to have a fund to do that, to support them to stay in the neighborhood. So that's the spirit of the ordinance. I introduced it with the Alderman Rosa and Alderman Maldonado at the last city council, and we look forward to a debate on this and passing it in the next few months.
Great, thank you. And along those lines, what about the new developments and a percentage of low-income housing in each of the developments? Is that?
Yeah. Great, very dear to my heart. I'm very proud that the First Ward over the last 5 years is significantly higher in the #1 ward in the city in providing affordable units on site. So when developers build 10 or more units, they have the choice to buy out of that or build them on site. And in my ward, we have them build them on site, not only at the 10% for the ordinance, but we go to 15%, and we just did it at 100% in Logan Square because it's okay. We need an affordable housing fund, and if they pay into that, which they all want to do because it's cheaper for them, that's good. But those dollars never come back to my ward. They go to other places in the city. So we have built close to 200 units, or we will have built by the end of this year. We're going to do more, recognizing the development's good for the community, but we also have to keep a decent amount of affordability.
Great. Thank you, Alderman. We have a caller on the line. Caller, what is your question?
Hi. Actually, it seems like you're already kind of touching on the topic having to do with what I wanted to ask. Gentrification has kind of become it's developed such a negative connotation recently. And, by definition, it actually means improvement.
Sure.
So I just kind of wanted to pick your brain a little bit about, I actually live in Pilsen, and it's kind of going through
Sure.
A lot of improvements and changes and things like that. So based on your experience being in a ward that's now thriving after going through a lot of changes, can you maybe talk about like some of the do's and don'ts that you would recommend to try to maybe keep everyone happy, even though that seems like something that's so hard to do.
Right.
But maybe to kind of like make sure that everyone kind of feels like they're heard.
Sure. Well, Pilsen is a very similar community that I would say to Logan Square and Wicker Park, especially Logan Square today, in terms of Latino majority, but very desirable and a thriving community. There's policies that have been adopted by other elected officials that have standards where they want affordable housing to be built at 50-60% when developments are done. The challenge with that is no affordable housing gets built because the threshold's too high. And then there are other neighborhoods like Lincoln Park, back in the 60s and 70s, traditionally a more mixed neighborhood. Great neighborhood, don't get me wrong, Lincoln Park's a great neighborhood, but it is losing density according to the Chicago Tribune because they do not allow for developments that are large, so you get McMansions on 3 lots with 2.5 or 3 people in it. And so, to your question, I mean, there's no panacea, it's not perfection on what we do, but we try to have the most thorough community process that we can, especially when there are larger developments. And we, again, to the earlier question from Freddie, push for and win 15% affordable housing on site. And, by the way, just brought and are bringing, it'll break ground this next 2-3 months, 100% affordable housing right in the heart of Logan Square. There's a great book you might want to check out that was written about Brooklyn. Just came out about 2 months ago, and you could exchange the word Brooklyn in the book with Pilsen, Logan Square, Wicker Park, and it talks about that. I'll end on this, Freddie. I bet every elected official, left, right, or center, would say to a question of what they want in their neighborhoods, they want safe streets, good schools, a good economy, and diversity in housing, especially in urban communities. But then to say they don't want gentrification. And so one person's gentrification is another person's economic development. And what we're trying to do and working hard to do in the first ward is to not go to either extreme that doesn't provide for any affordable housing because of what I would say poor policy, or because the community is too expensive. We're trying to sort of go that middle way. It's worked so far, but it does take a lot of work.
Great. Thank you for that caller, for that question. Here's another one from me. You have a pledge to work with the Chicago Housing Authority and the community leaders to build at least 50% CHA-sponsored apartments in your ward before the term comes to an end. What's the reason behind this pledge?
So it's I'll try to succinct it. Because CHA housing, obviously traditionally in the history of it, has only been saturated and been in certain parts of the city, not the north side as much. So it's not spread out and integrated, Freddie, as much as it should be. So myself and several aldermen have pledged to build at least 50 units in our wards and support that because it is the alderman's either responsibility or power, whatever way you want to look at it, to approve the zoning that would apply and would provide for this kind of housing. And too many times there are local officials that say they support affordable housing, they support public housing, but when it comes to their wards, it doesn't happen. So we signed that pledge. I'm going to far exceed 50. We have 44 units that are going to come online next year. I have Lathrop Homes that's going to come on with 400 and some units. We have already 32 units built as part of larger developments. So we're going to do more than 50, but that's again the spirit behind it is that public housing, affordable housing should not and cannot, and going forward with the segregation of our city, needs to be spread out, and that especially applies to the north side wards of our city.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you for that answer to that question, Alderman.
Yeah, Freddie.
You mentioned Lathrop Homes.
Sure.
Can you give a little update as to where we are with that development?
Great. So a little background for the viewers. Lathrop Homes, historical public housing project, has a great history. Had some bad times during the 80s, and the CHA, Chicago Housing Authority, basically did not pay attention to it as it went and got dismantled. But it's 27 acres on the north side, on the river. I would say a very unique parcel of land in the city. We're about ready to break ground. The last 6 years we've been working on this. It has been worked on for several years before the revitalization of Lathrop Homes. It'll return 400 and some units of public housing to the site. It'll return another 300 or so affordable rental and purchase units to the site. And then there will be an unrestricted portion that will be at market rate. Integrating those communities, access to the river and opening that up. So our public housing residents get units they deserve on the north side. They also will have opportunities to see how they can rent an affordable unit and how they can buy an affordable unit and perhaps maybe even purchase a unit at market price. I think when we're done with this, Freddie, not only nationally but internationally, the Lathrop Homes will be the envy of urban housing communities and how mixed income and diverse communities are not only good for the residents but good for the city as a whole. So I'm very, very excited to champion this, and we're looking at breaking ground in the next few months.
Great. Well, thank you for that update. Looking forward to see what happens in that community. Just to remind our viewers that you're watching CAN TV's Political Forum. We're available for your questions, so please call us at 312-738-1060 with questions for the alderman. And we have a caller on the line. Caller, what is your question?
Yes, good evening. I have a question about assault rifles. There's been a lot of news lately talking about crimes in the city of Chicago where there's been assault rifles, high-powered assault rifles being used. And so the question has come up on whether the Chicago Police Department needs more officers equipped with, some sort of assault rifle, high-power assault rifle to help combat that sort of crime. What is your take on that?
Sure. Thank you so much for the question. I think the short answer would be you would. I mean, if you're fighting crime, you would want to have the same tools in your tool shed, in this case weapons, as your enemy does. However, I don't believe that bringing more weapons, in this case assault rifles, to the problem is the answer. Some folks point to New York, and rightly so, about their gun laws being similar to ours or maybe even a little more lenient. And our gun laws aren't working in Chicago. I would disagree because New York is surrounded by New Jersey, Massachusetts that have very strict gun laws. What we have is Indiana and Wisconsin that have very lax gun laws. And that's how these weapons are getting into the hands of criminals and gangbangers. But I will sit there and defend our Chicago police. The instance you're talking about was two gang members that came by with AR-15s that were able to shoot indiscriminately at two police officers that were in a van, and their bullets cut through the van and hit the officers that had vests on, and thank goodness they didn't die. But that bullet went through a van and hit them in the vest, and they were still injured. So I don't discount the thinking that more police need to be trained in those sort of weapons, but the better result is having gun legislation at the state level, which the Chicago aldermen do not control. The state controls. Better gun legislation so repeat offenders are not coming out as they are now, and for stopping the loopholes that allow for semi-automatic and that are easily turned into automatic weapons into the hands of people that are going to shoot at our police and unfortunately may hit an innocent bystander, as happens unfortunately in our city too often. So I know it's a long answer to your question, but it's a complex issue, and that's my position on it.
Caller, thank you for that question. And there's a question I have, Alderman, that if we get time, we'll get to it, that relates to this one here.
Okay.
I just want to talk about the first ward.
Sure.
Show the map. If you want to reach the alderman, you have his information there. Their office located on North Avenue. There's the ward for email and the ward1.org for the webpage, and I'll go to the webpage in a second. But that's the map. You want to just briefly...
Sure. It's an interesting map, but the neighborhoods are roughly West Town, East Village, a little bit of Ukrainian Village, Humboldt Park, Logan Square, West Bucktown, and then West Hubble Park. A very diverse, socioeconomically diverse ward, probably one of the most socioeconomically diverse wards in the city. And I always say that's its strength, not its weakness, and I'm just humbled and proud to represent it.
Great, thank you for that. And you also have a website. We're going to show the website here. You can go on his website, request services. There's a newsletter. Sign up for the newsletter here.
Yep,
There's an
every
opportunity.
Thursday we send out an e-newsletter.
Okay, so that's an opportunity for anybody that wants to find out more about what's going on in the first ward. You can have that option there as well. Thank you.
Of course.
I have another question. No, since we have no callers, please give us a call, 312-738-1060 with a question for the alderman. And we have a caller on the line. Caller, what is your question?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Alderman. I wanted to ask about the plan that the mayor has put forth to try to bail out the Chicago public school system by giving them a loan to the tune of about $389 million.
Sure.
I want to know if you think that is a good idea, and B, fiscally sustainable for the school system going forward.
Great question. Full disclosure, we won't have a vote on that as aldermen. That'll be a decision made by the school board, which the mayor has proposed. It's not a good solution, but it's probably the only ones that we have control of, that being the city, because Springfield, and you should really tune in to your state representatives and your state senators. Your aldermen in Chicago do everything, and we're not going to change that, and I love that. But the state has failed to pay their fair share to our students, and therefore it's left up to the school board, the mayor, and aldermen, not on a vote, but in support or not supporting, how we continue the school year till the end this year and how we start on time next year. And our options are so limited by the power that we have or don't have, that what we have is either doing what the mayor has proposed, which is issuing more very expensive bonds that are going to cost taxpayers money in the long term, or coming up with more city revenue ideas. I still think that the second is a better option than the first, and that may still come out. But if you really, really want to talk about school funding reform, we've got to talk about new revenue. And that new revenue in the terms of a progressive income tax. And we can debate the goods and bads of these, but these should be on the table. A progressive income tax, a LaSalle Street tax, which is a tax on transactions, a loophole that needs to be changed where if someone goes out and is a carpenter and makes $30 an hour, they're taxed at their tax rate of 26%. But if I sit at my desk and earn capital gains as my income, I only get taxed at 15%. That's fundamentally unfair. Those are all state issues. We cannot change those laws as aldermen or as a city council. So we really need to focus on that as a state. But at the end, the alderman, the mayor, and the school board have to come up with a solution. And right now, our best options for right now are either issuing more bonds at a very high interest rate or taxing luxury goods, which I think is a second option and a better option. We're going to find that out in the next few weeks. As you know, a budget still has not passed at the state. Their deadline was today. That deadline has passed. It looks like they're going to move on past that. It has true effects on our city when they're not funding the schools at the level that they should.
Caller, thank you for that question, and
Very good
Alderman,
question,
thank you.
yeah.
Thank you for that answer. Talking about schools, I have a question about the Chicago Teachers Union taking a step to merge with the union representing many of the city charter schools. What is your reaction to that?
Well, I think, what's best for the students, mainly and the parents, is best for this discussion. And if I believe the IFF, International Federation, or the Illinois Federation, is the organizer and the union for charter schools that do unionize. Not many of them are, but there are some and more are going that path. And I believe if those members believe that the Chicago Teachers Union and a merger would be better for not only themselves, but would be better for their long-term discussions with CPS and the students and teachers, it would be a good thing. Teachers are some of the hardest working, underpaid folks that are in our city. and they need a strong union to represent them if they so choose to do that. Of course, all public schools are represented by the union, and the charter public schools have a choice in that. And I would support any choice of going, of merging those two for strength. But let's also remember why they're there, and that's for our students that are achieving more and more and higher every year. I'm so proud. I have 15 schools, Freddie, 15 public schools in the first ward, and all of them are doing much, much better than they were 10 years ago. It's not because I've been there. I've, of course, advocated support, but it's because of the parents, teachers, and students that are dedicated to their schools.
Okay, thank you, Alderman. You introduced legislation to protect drivers from predatory practices by parking lot management companies that are too quick to boot a car in the private lots.
Sure.
What do you think? Can you share a little bit more about that?
Very, very simply, you don't want your car towed or booted. No one does. I've unfortunately happened to me on both sides. I've had my car towed and booted. But if you had to have something, let's say you abused the law, and we're talking, Freddie, about private parking lots. This is not the city. This is private parking lots.
Yes.
The booting companies are only able to charge a lot less than the towing companies. And I would prefer in my ward, again, no one to be booted or towed, but if they park in a parking lot and they abuse it, I'd rather have them or myself get a boot than get a tow for a few reasons. One, cars on the street, tow trucks on the street, bad for the environment. Two, if you've ever had your car towed, it's a terrible experience. We have to go somewhere, find out, talk through a bulletproof glass with a rude person and try to get your car back that's been towed across the city and has scribbles all over the window. At least when you come back and you've abused your parking, if you have a boot on it, you can get it done fairly quickly by giving a credit card. Your car's right there. However, we also don't want to be booted in 30 seconds. You park, you're going to go to a little establishment. Oh my gosh, I see a friend across the street. You walk to say hi to him, and then you come back because you're going to go to the establishment that you parked at, and you've gotten booted, and the manager there says, well, you left the lot. Sorry, you can get booted. So we want to get a little bit of a time lapse from when you park just to give some relief so that in those situations, you're not abusing the parking lot. You just happen to go away for a minute or two. And that's the legislation that I proposed. And I'm thinking that we're going to get a lot of support from the council on that.
Oh, good.
Good question.
Yeah, it's a good response. Thank you.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk about regulating Airbnb in Chicago. Reports state that last year Chicago residents earned around $67 million through Airbnb. Is it a good thing in your opinion or not?
Well, it needs to be regulated, and we have regulations on the books that we passed. But I believe the regulations we have right now are good. If we overregulate this business, as some cities have overregulated ride sharing and have overregulated house sharing, they will not stay. And I'll tell you in my ward, Freddie,
Yes.
we've got residents, rightly so, that are, as we talked about before, higher property taxes, higher home values, having a tough time staying, that have come to me and lobbied and said, please support Airbnb and other opportunities like that for us because it allows us to get a little more income to pay our rent, to pay our mortgage, I should say. And so this is the new shared economy. Whether you agree with it or not, it's here. And like all new economies, whether it was the Pony Express going to the railroad going to trucks, we're in a sharing economy when it comes to rides, when it comes to living, when it comes to visiting neighborhoods. So I'm embracing it, and we should not overregulate that. And I'm glad to be one of the leaders that has that opinion.
Great, thank you for that response. Time's running out. Again,
Well, Freddie, I have to
goes
say,
fast.
CAN TV is a valuable asset. Glad to support it, and great questions by yourself, and thank you for the callers that called in.
Yeah, thank you, callers. Anything else you want to share about the first ward? Anything coming up? Any events?
We've got every first Thursday of the month, we have First Thursdays with the First Ward. It's not a fundraiser, it's a meet and greet. Check out my website, go to my Facebook page, and come visit us. Get a soda or a beer in a local place in the First Ward, and I know you'll enjoy yourself. And my website's aldermanmoreno.com. please come visit us.
I'd like to thank Sylvia, our technician, for manning the phones. Thank you as always.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Did a great job. Thank you, callers, for calling with your questions. And Alderman, thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you,
We
Freddie.
really appreciate it.
Good to
Thank
see
you so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Okay.